Okay, so the new One Piece chapter is out, chapter 1127. And first off, before we dive into anything that actually happened in this week's chapter, we of course have to talk about the Straw Hats' new outfits. Starting with this monstrosity of a look for Zoro. Like with this panel, I was incredibly gassed. Zoro looked incredibly cool, covered in black with a black cloak and almost a demonic aura about it. But then at the end, we see him looking like this. Like what the fuck is this Foxy inspired goggles that he's got on? My guy looks like he's heading to math class, not heading to fight Shanks and the other giants. As for the other Straw Hats, they all look about as well dressed as we assumed they would be. Sanji has a hooded cloak on that is reportedly multicolored. Luffy and Usopp are both running around with Viking inspired helmets on, and Nami of course has that sexy OnlyFans Viking cosplay on. Overall, all the outfits look incredibly cool, but Zoro's outfit is going to take a bit of getting used to for me. Like I can't lie, I really hate those goggles. They look incredibly goofy looking. Like my guy's got to get them kicked off his face at some point soon. As for the chapter itself, well, we begin with the amazing Yamato cover story like always, where Yamato is talking to Inarashi about the missing girls. It's a cover story that will eventually go somewhere interesting as it's kind of following Odin's journey, but as of right now, it's just kind of there. It's not the worst we've had and it's by far not the best, it's just kind of there. We then finally begin the chapter itself with a fire breaking out in the forest just outside the giant's village. And as it stands, the village itself is actually made of Lego blocks just like the castle, which is incredibly interesting because last week we were all speculating that Lego might just be the castle that Nami's in, and she's actually in some sort of kid's toy house of one of the giants. But actually with this week's chapter, it's been confirmed that it's actually the entire village that is made of Lego blocks. They also refer to the giant tree off in the distance as Yggdrasil, which immediately ties us to tons of Norse mythology to do with just that tree in general. Which is an incredibly great thing to see, because Oda can do so many fun things with the Norse mythology that we all know and heard about. But as a side note, isn't it crazy that the tree looks like that from this distance? Like if you remember, the last time we seen that tree, it was freaking massive and extremely wide. So I don't know, it looks a bit on the small side to me, and actually indicates to me that we might actually not be anywhere near the actual city of Elbaf itself. But now moving on, we also find out that apparently somewhere on this island there's another sun god, known as the Great Sun God. Now if we're following the old gods of mythology, this is most likely just a false god of some kind. Just another fake version of the sun god that we know to be Luffy. And remember, this also wouldn't even be the first time Oda's had an imposter straw hat in the series. Just think back to Fat Luffy, the Mero Black from Sabaody. That guy looked nothing like Luffy, but everybody believed him to be Luffy. So a false god with white hair going by Sun God Luffy's title isn't all that unbelievable in my opinion. But I also doubt it's really going to amount to anything all that important. We then see another mystery with how the giant beasts from Elbaf are now falling to the ground and dying. It looks as if someone's actually going around and beating them to death. I don't believe this is going to turn out to be any of the Straw Hat crew, as the starting 5 are all together in the Lego castle at this point, and the others appear to be on the opposite side of the entire island. So the likely possibility is that this is actually another person altogether from another crew of some sort. It could very well be the return of useless Captain Mid. But moving right along, the giants did talk about how the rumble they heard off in the distance was in fact the ear god falling to the ground. Which is incredibly surprising to the second giant because according to him, it should be impossible for anything to have happened to a rabbit of that size. Which means that as it appears around Elbaf, the word god is going to appear quite a lot in this arc. As right now, even rabbits are being called gods. Which actually makes me begin to question what the word god really means for these giants. Now we then move over to Nami, who has just woken up in the Lego castle. She remarks about how she has no clue how she got here or how she got any of these new clothes. Meaning, like we briefly discussed in the spoilers video, someone did indeed go about changing the outfits of every Straw Hat member in this castle. Just don't tell Sanji that because he'd be out for blood if he finds out that someone saw Nami's naked body. Nami uses Zeus to kill some of the bugs before running scared from a giant puffball monster. She runs towards the sound of Usopp's voice, but it turns out that he's actually inside a giant monster of his own, a giant cat monster. He asks Nami for help, but she denies him because she's got her own beast to worry about. She turns around and uses Zeus to kill the giant puffball monster. But just as things are going good for her, she falls down and the two begin to be chased by the giant cat. They run into a dead end and Usopp remembers what the giant said about the drink that they drunk causing hallucinations, which makes him think that the cat and everything else around him is all fake and a part of his imagination. So he stands tall and brave in front of the cat and gets swiped away like he is nothing. Nami then is so scared that she reaches breaking point and calls for Luffy, Sanji and Zoro to save her. And right at that moment we hear an all too familiar voice scream out, "Nami-san." It's Sanji, Luffy and Zoro, who show up and unleash an incredible combo attack on the giant lion-like kitty cat. We then see Sanji run over to Nami to see if she's okay, and we see Zoro who is curious about how the giant beast even got here. Luffy, in standard Luffy fashion, just wants to eat it. So you know, it's business as usual for the monster trio. Luffy then talks about going out and finding strong beasts like this cat to fight. But Zoro, in true Vice Captain style, tells him that they need to go find the ship and the others to make sure everything is okay. Sanji, on the other hand, just like Luffy, just wants to cook up some good food. Nami remains scared and confused as fuck, and Usopp is still alive but in very bad shape. The chapter ends off with them remaining curious about where the hell they actually are and how the hell they even got here. We also then get the saddest of lines from Oda himself. It's the line that reveals there is going to be a break next week. So there you have it, chapter 1127. Overall, just a fairly decent chapter. Some action from the founding 5 members of the crew, along with some Norse Viking mythology thrown in there. It's not a peak chapter or anything remotely all that interesting, but it's a good chapter for the start of an arc. A lot of people go about saying it's a bit boring and not all that revealing, but remember, this was just all the Straw Hats finding each other, which normally takes 2 or 3, even 5 chapters sometimes to do at the beginning of an arc. So Oda making them all find each other within one chapter is actually an incredibly good thing and shows that he may potentially be pushing for this series to end within the next 3 years. But now in this chapter we also got the reveal that somewhere on the island there's another sun god and even an ear god, and someone who's also mysteriously going around and trying to kill them. Someone who could potentially be useless Captain Mid. So yeah, like I said, it's a fairly decent chapter overall, with some interesting points and some interesting mysteries that's yet to be uncovered. We will of course be rereading this chapter over the next coming days and then releasing some new theories and potential possibilities that might come from anything that was said within it. Oh, and we're also dropping a massive Mihawk theory video within the next couple of days. So make sure you subscribe and hit that bell down below so that you don't miss it. But with all that said, I think that's going to do it for this review on the new One Piece chapter. Tell me down below what your thoughts are on it. Did you enjoy it? Do you think this new sun god is going to be a threat to Luffy? Who's this mysterious fella that's going around causing mad destruction? Could it be useless Captain Mid or somebody else? Tell me all that down below. But with that, I'm out. Have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and peace.